You're standing in a small conference room, and the sentence you just said out loud was wrong, obviously. Visibly wrong. In front of everyone. Before you can even finish apologizing, heat is already climbing your neck and spreading across both cheeks, in full view of every person in the room. You didn't choose this. You can't stop it once it starts. And you almost certainly can't make it happen on command, even if you tried right now, with everything you have. That's strange, when you think about it. Nearly every other emotional expression humans have: a smile, a frown, tears, even fear can be faked with enough skill. Actors do it professionally. But blushing sits in a category almost entirely by itself. A visible, public broadcast of your internal state that your own nervous system refuses to let you control. That's not a design flaw. It may be the entire point. In 1872, Charles Darwin published The Expression of the Emotions in Man and Animals, a book largely built on the idea that emotional expressions evolved because they served real biological functions. Buried inside it is a line still quoted in blushing research today. Darwin called blushing the most peculiar and the most human of all expressions. He meant that almost literally. Darwin argued, based on correspondence and observation gathered from around the world, that blushing appeared to be uniquely human, not observed as a comparable social emotional display in other animals, despite plenty of other emotional expressions having clear animal counterparts. What genuinely puzzled Darwin was the mechanism itself. A blush isn't something you decide to display, the way you might decide to smile politely at someone you dislike. It's an involuntary vascular response, blood vessels near the surface of your skin dilating, driven by your sympathetic nervous system. Triggered specifically by self-conscious emotion, embarrassment, shame, or being the sudden, unwanted center of attention. Darwin considered this involuntary quality the whole reason it deserved special attention more than a century before neuroscience could explain what's actually happening under the skin. Modern researchers, including psychologists Dijk and Jong, have spent years investigating a question Darwin could only speculate about. What is a blush actually communicating, and why would evolution build a signal this hard to control? Their research points toward what evolutionary biologists call an honest signal, a display valuable specifically because it can't be faked. Plenty of social signals can be manipulated. A forced smile, a feigned apology, performed sympathy nobody feels. A blush resists that kind of manipulation, because it's driven by an involuntary nervous system response rather than a conscious choice. It functions as close to unforgeable proof that you genuinely recognize a social mistake and feel uncomfortable about it. Dijk and Jong's work has found that people who blush after a social transgression tend to be rated more favorably by observers than people who show the identical transgression without blushing. Witnesses appear to read the blush as credible evidence of remorse, even though the blushing person did nothing more than fail to suppress an automatic physical response. In a species that depends heavily on trust and cooperation within a group, reliably identifying who genuinely feels bad about a mistake versus who's simply performing regret would have been a real, practical advantage. A blush, precisely because you can't will it into existence, may have solved that problem before language ever could. Here's the part that makes the whole system make sense as something evolution built this way on purpose. If blushing were something people could consciously trigger, it would become just another performable social tool practiced, deployed strategically, no more trustworthy than a rehearsed apology. Its value as a signal depends entirely on the fact that you cannot fake it convincingly, and, just as importantly, cannot suppress it convincingly either, even when you desperately want to. Researchers studying self-conscious emotions have repeatedly observed something that confirms this. The harder people consciously try to stop themselves from blushing in an embarrassing moment, the more attention their own nervous system directs toward the situation, and often, the worse the blush becomes. The system appears actively resistant to being overridden by willpower. Exactly what you'd expect from a signal whose entire function depends on being impossible to counterfeit. A dishonest signal anyone could produce at will would have been worthless to the small, tightly bonded groups our ancestors depended on for survival. An honest one, wired directly into the nervous system and immune to conscious control, was worth keeping even at the cost of some deeply awkward moments across every generation since. Here's where this stops being a story about Darwin and 19th century naturalists. Every time you've desperately wanted to stop yourself from blushing and couldn't in a meeting, on a date, being complimented in front of strangers, you weren't failing at self-control. You were experiencing a system working exactly as designed, broadcasting your genuine social awareness to everyone around you, whether you wanted it to or not. This is also very possibly why a blush tends to soften how people react to your mistakes, rather than worsen it. The people around you, often without consciously realizing why, are reading that involuntary flush of color as something language sometimes struggles to prove. That you know, and that you care. You're not weak for turning red in front of people. You're running one of the only completely honest signals your body has ever been given. At the exact moment honesty happens to matter most. Darwin never fully solved why this expression exists, only that it fascinated him more than almost any other. Modern research has caught up to what he suspected. A blush isn't embarrassment malfunctioning. It's communication your ancestors couldn't afford to lose. You still can't control it. You were never supposed to be able to. That's not the flaw. That was always the feature.